Good morning, everybody. It's once again Ted the Speed Learner, and I had seen a video on YouTube about biblical slavery, and I wanted to give some response to it. Now, I'm not going to cover every form of biblical slavery. There are several forms of biblical slavery, and I'm not going to cover them all here today. I'm just going to cover two. The first one was talking about enslaving a group of people because of nationality. This is what the atheists are saying. Well, the Bible condones this. The Bible does not condone this. The book of Exodus is a clear example of how much the Bible does not condone slavery due to a nationality. Okay? Here's how that works. The Hebrews were enslaved because of their nationality. If you were Hebrew, you were automatically enslaved by Pharaoh. Well, here was God's answer to that. 10 plagues, and he wiped out all of Pharaoh's army. Yeah, God really condones slavery due to nationality, doesn't he? I don't think so. If God doesn't condone it, why do we? Let me tell you something. If the Confederate States of America had just read the book of Exodus the way it's supposed to be read, the Civil War would have never happened. The Confederate States of America would have never seceded from the Union, and they would have never, ever had slaves to begin with. Because the Bible condemns it. That form of slavery is condemned by the Bible itself. The book of Exodus clearly states God's position. You don't enslave a people because of nationality. So, who does get enslaved? Well, let's take a look at the Roman Empire. In the Roman Empire, if you got massively into debt and you couldn't pay it back, you went to prison. That's the way it worked. You went to prison until you paid the debt back. And let me tell you something. In the United States right now, there are prisons being built right now to accommodate people who are heavy into debt. You get heavy into debt, you're going to eventually go to prison for it. And I say amen to it. Now you say, well, how can you say that now? Okay, here's the answer. Back in biblical times, they did not have internet, television, radio. Every book was printed by hand, by scribes. Okay, when you were called a scribe, you were called a scribe because you could actually write. And scribes did not generally teach people how to write on paper unless you paid them. And they would charge an enormous amount to get that done. So, and a lot of people back then were too poor to pay for a scribe to teach their kids how to write. Now granted, there were exceptions. Matthew was a tax collector, so he was taught how to write. Luke was a doctor, so he was taught how to write. Paul was a part of the Jewish Sanhedrin type thing. I don't know exactly what his position was. But before he became Paul, that's what he was. And of course, he was taught how to write. He was also taught how to read, too. So, things in biblical times were a lot different than they are today. Today, if you want an education, all you have to do as a kid is go to school. As an adult, all you have to do is turn on your internet. And now that I've provided all this free education all over YouTube, there really is no excuse for you not advancing your skills. And you can get better jobs, and you can pay your debt off like that. So, accumulating a mass dose of debt and refusing to do anything about it is, in this day and age, childish. With all the things that you've been given the advantage of, and you still don't do it. So, at this point in the game, I would say that if they started opening up debtors' prisons and start putting people in them, and believe me, one of these days that's exactly what they're going to do, I say amen to it. About time. But in another way, aren't some people already in debtors' prisons? After all, if you get into a mass dose of debt and you have to take a low-paying job to try to pay that debt back, isn't that kind of a form of debtors' prison? You really can't leave the job because you still owe the money. So there you go. Alright. That's all really I've got to say about all this. It's just a matter of, if you're going into slavery because You racked up a massive debt and you think that there's no other way to pay it off. Well, there you go. And that's not condemned in the Bible. Alright? Slavery due to a national heritage is condemned, but when you rack up a debt like that, it's not condemned. It's condoned. So that's my views. When I do more research, I'll give you more details about all this, but there you go. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.